Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the adjourned regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council. The meeting was adjourned from Wednesday, July 19th, 2017. Tonight is July 26th, 2017, and it's approximately 6:31 in the evening. And if we could have a roll call, we'll get started.
Councilmember Chu?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Morrison?
Here. Vice
Mayor Hilmer?
Here.
And Mayor Hara?
Here. And with that, for those who are able, can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll move through the agenda for this evening, and item number 2 is presentations and proclamations. I see there are none, unless I'm wrong about that. In which case, we will move on to agenda item number 3, which is public comment, which is limited for matters not listed on the agenda. If you have a public comment that you would like to bring up at this point, please approach the podium, state your name and city. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you are representing a group, we'll have 5 minutes. The council is not permitted to take action and is strictly limited to discuss any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or the need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. Is there any member from the public who would like to take advantage of this evening? Yes, Angela, please approach the podium.
Is this the podium? Is this the microphone?
That's it. They're both right.
Okay, hi. My name is Angela Curley, and I'm married to Arthur Curley, a 66 graduate of Redwood High School. We reside in Larkspur, and we also anchor our businesses here. Art has his law firm over in Larkspur Landing, and I have my real estate practice right next to the Lark Theater on Magnolia. And we've been longtime community activists involved in various levels. You know, PTA, Team Mom, been in the Larkspur City Parade 14 years in a row. Both of us serve on the Deepwater Dredging Committee of Corte Madera Creek. So the reason I'm here, some of you are already aware that I've been very involved in this beautification of Magnolia project. Ann approached me a couple years ago and said, what do you think? And I started thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I really would like to see it sparkle again. So I actually initiated my own contest, which has already come and gone. I approached 150 businesses, provided the rules of the contest, and even provided the cash prizes. And I learned a lot visiting all the businesses along Magnolia and how they each are interested in doing beautification along Magnolia, but don't feel they have the collaboration of the city for whatever reasons. I'm not here to blame or point the finger. I'm just saying that we have a disconnect between our business community and the city officials. So I'm here to help be a conduit for that going forward. The project that we are initiating is going to be called the Larkspur Native Plant Corridor. And after I did this contest, there was a little article in the newspaper. I was actually called by the California Native Plant Society. And these are individuals that use native species of wildflowers, flowers, and plants wherever they do their thing. They just recently did the Audubon Society, for example. And they approached me and said, hey, we'd really like to do Larkspur. We like your idea of beautification, but if you're going to do it, why don't you use native species that are indigenous to the area that are water tolerant, or drought tolerant is a better term for it, and are actual pollinators. For example, we see how beautiful it looks along Corte Madera, but probably unknowns to most of you, these are not, it's like zero-calorie food for pollinators. Yes, they're attracted to the flowers, they're attracted the hummingbirds and the bees and so forth, but they get no nourishment out of it. They get 0 calories. So if we were planting these same islands with native species, then they get fed, they take it back, and it starts that food chain that's so important for the ecology of our community. Anyway, our goal is to beautify Larkspur, particularly Magnolia Avenue, and we want to start with planting 3 small common islands in downtown Larkspur with native plants that are sustainable, drought tolerant, and attractive. The California Native Plant Society, the Marin County chapter, has agreed to assist with sourcing and installing plants local to Marin that can tolerate the local climate variables as well as hot, dry conditions and the heat off the asphalt, which is an important condition we don't often think about when we're planting. The location that we, as a small committee, right now there's only 4 of us on it, to begin, we'd like to try the 3 small common islands that are directly across from the Lark Theater on Magnolia. The volunteer effort will be supported by the Marin chapter of the California Native Plant Society. An educational hands-on planting day is proposed. We will recruit local hobby and professional gardeners to lend a hand and to be part of the effort. Utilizing native plants is ecologically beneficial, and the use of the Larkspur species of wildflower will be incorporated. We have our own flower. That's what Larkspur is actually named after. The California Native Plant Society members on the current committee are Rob Katz, a botanist, and Laura Lovett, our Larkspur Community Gardener member. The California Native Plant Society will lend a hand and be part of the planting effort. And we've also thought about perhaps incorporating the Ecology Club at Redwood High School, so it can become a project for them where they can get points or whatever they get towards graduation. Funding, that's always the big question, particularly with the city. We think this can be privately funded, that we don't need to ask the city for any money. Believe it or not, the Native Plant Society came to me and I said, well, how much money are you going to need to do this? And they went, I don't know, less than $500. I was like, what? I mean, I was ready to pay for it myself, but I think we should enlist community members, and I'm willing to go out into the community and go to my sources and my contacts to get funding to get this started. They just need it for mulching, some of the seeds, some of the plantings, some of the coverings. Let's see. Okay, I already said this. Solicit funding through local contacts and resources to contribute. The Marin California Native Plant Society will also contribute some of the plants because they know the proper ones to plant. We can also incorporate some plants that aren't native just to fill it out and make it look more colorful. But they showed me 4 pages of indigenous plants, and they're gorgeous. So why aren't we using them? What we're looking for is permission from the city council, and the Larkspur City Works Department. You know, what do we need? How do we go about it? How do we indemnify the city? How do we get permission to move forward? One of the proposals was to contact Dick Whitley for ideas and where to get the city's support and what advice regarding the maintenance ongoing, which if we do native plants will be less than what you're incurring now because it'll need less water and less hands-on maintenance. Public Works will need to be advised on what irrigation system is already in place there because it will need to be adjusted or rerouted as needed once planting is done. And then perhaps, if needed, manage the irrigation ongoing, similar to what you're doing now, but probably less use. What's the timeline? What the Native Plant Society is telling me, we need to plant before Thanksgiving. If we don't get this going in the ground before the rains, then we run the risk of trying to plant it later on when it won't take. So the project itself to do would probably take 1 or 2 days, and we're ready to go. And that's it. Ta-da.
Great.
So
Thank
are you have people taking minutes? I can leave these as notes for you? No?
If
Okay.
you just leave it with Jamie, and we'll follow up as appropriate.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're supposed to comment too much on public, but go
I
ahead.
just have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are any of the plants that exist in the islands now can stay?
Yes, some of them obviously are, those that are survivors, you don't want to uproot them. On the 3 islands that you have now, you have sort of a bristly rose-like bush. That's it. What was there before was, I think there were wild strawberries and they didn't make it. So you're down to pretty much just tan bark on the 3 islands that we're talking about right now. So the thought is if we get it going and it's going to look fabulous, everybody's going to go, wow. And then we can carry it forward and expand on a radius basis to other parts of the town. By the way, one of the members said that they did volunteer also to do the landscaping for the library, all in native plants, which would be really super cool.
Great.
Any other questions?
Thanks very
From
much.
the gallery? Okay, I'm going to go to dinner.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your coming this evening. We will, thank you. So with that, unless there's any other members of the public who would like to speak at this time, we will move on to item number 4, which is approval of the consent calendar. And we have one item on the consent calendar, I think, this evening, item 4.1, which is introduce and waive second reading and adopt ordinance 1019, extending the existing voter-approved local city of Larkspur sales tax. Would anyone like to take this item off the consent calendar? Mr. Holmes would like to do that. That's all right? We will take it off and we'll have a hearing on that. Should we go ahead with that item at this point, or do we want to proceed with the rest?
That'd be fine, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, why don't we then just go ahead with this item, and we'll have comments from staff.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, last week, the council adopted a resolution to place the matter covered in this ordinance on the November 7, 2017 ballot. The ordinance is essentially the law that the voters are proposing to enact and codify within the Larkspur Municipal Code. Last week, you waived the first reading, and tonight you are being asked to adopt the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from City Council of our city manager?
No, I think we had a big debate last time.
I think that's right. So in that case, any comments from the public on this item? Please, James.
James Holmes, Larkspur. I'd like to request modifications to 2 items on the proposed ordinance that you have, which is proposed ordinance 10/19/17. You have it there. And the first and most substantive one is on page 8 of the proposed ordinance. The section 3.24.140, which is Annual Audit Citizens Oversight Committee. And in particular, I'd like to request an addition to item B, the 7th line. And what I would like to request be added is language which was present in the current ordinance that is in force, but which was dropped from the proposed ordinance. I'd like to provide to the council members who do
James, you
not
should give
already-
it to the clerk.
Oh, it's going to come around this way, but I will.
I'll pass them out for you.
Yeah, all right. Let's see, 1, 2. I
We have
think
them, James.
The mayor
Yeah.
needs a copy, and you also
Great,
need a
thank
copy.
you.
If you will take a look at that, you will see the underlying provision. The underlying provision relates to the, did I give you a copy of that? No. The underlined provision relates to the duties of the Measure C committee, and in particular, a look back to evaluate what was done. That again is in the current ordinance, but it was deleted from the proposed ordinance. And I am requesting that that language be included in the proposed ordinance so that the scope of the Citizens Oversight Committee with respect to past activities is consistent with the scope of the committee's activities and duties under the current ordinance. Now, to be specific, I would request that the underlined language be placed or inserted on the 7th line of the new draft, the 7th line in B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That 7th line begins auditor's report.
I have a question,
And
Mr. Mayor.
if you insert it between report and, then the language will be consistent with the current version.
James, I think we have a question from Councilmember Helmer.
I have a question for the speaker or staff. Your suggestion has to do with a characterization of the report prepared by the auditors, correct?
No. It says, shall review the auditor's report, comma. And then the underlying language refers to review and evaluate what was actually done. So the auditor's report relates to the financing.
No, I understand, but what you're suggesting, at least if it's consistent with what you handed me,
Right,
it says the committee shall review the auditor's report,
comma,
in which the auditors evaluate the projects and services provided with the revenue from the tax.
No, he has them as 1, 2, and 3.
The committee shall review the auditor's report in which the auditors prepare such a report, evaluate the projects and services provided with revenue.
It's the evaluate the projects language.
That's all he wants, is that, put in there, the review and evaluate.
Yeah, but I think the intent here is that you're reviewing the auditor's report, not that you're reviewing the scope of the auditors.
It's reviewing what was actually done. It's the auditor's report. There are actually 3 separate items.
But I want to make clear that it's not, I don't think it's the intention of the Oversight Committee to be having authority over the preparation of the report by the auditors.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. It says, shall review the auditor's report, comma, then there's the underlined language. And then the last of the 3 duties is make recommendations to the city council regarding priorities. So reviewing the report and undertaking the evaluation of what was done are 2 separate items. The auditor's report would relate to the financing, and the evaluation would relate to the work that was
The
done.
projects.
The projects.
Yeah, I think,
make a
yeah,
suggestion,
we're
Mr.
going to go ahead and turn this over. Do you have a response to
I've been
this?
communicating with the city attorney,
Yes, please.
who would like to make sure that council knows that to amend the ordinance in the second reading means reintroducing the ordinance.
Right.
And given the timelines, doesn't seem like a viable choice. He and I concur that perhaps a better solution, regardless, is actually at the next meeting for the council to adopt a resolution clarifying what its expectations of the committee are. And that could be written in plainer English anyway, which might be beneficial to the public and the Oversight Committee. And I understand what Mr. Holmes is getting at, and we've worked collaboratively on the committee for several years, and I think we can specify very clearly what your expectations here are and what Mr. Holmes is accustomed to doing on the committee we can capture.
That seems like a reasonable resolution. I mean, my own view is that the concept reflected in the additional language is kind of implicit in what would be conducted as part of the review, but if we can make it more explicit through an additional resolution, that seems fine, unless there's an objection from any members of the council.
I think it's actually a more elegant solution because we do otherwise end up in the parsing of words and commas when we get trapped in the municipal code sometimes.
That sounds terrific. Mr. Holmes, do you have anything further?
Yes, I do, and that is with respect to the 6th whereas, if you can turn to page 1, the 6th whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That makes, there's a grammar, there's an editing or a typo, a grammar issue, and an inaccuracy issue, all on the 3. I'll read it. Whereas 90% of existing local funding as, I think that's supposed to be was, so add a W to as. It then goes on to say none were. I think were is supposed to be was because funding is singular, not plural. And the final, those are edits. And the final comment that I would make is for accuracy and consistency of language, I would insert after local the words voter approved, because that reference is to voter approved funding, and that's the term used both in the 5th and 8th whereases. And I think if you insert voter approved, it will be accurate, but if it just says existing local funding, that isn't really accurate because there has been local funding which was not spent on the roads. So my suggestion would be that it should read 90% of existing local voter-approved funding was spent on road repair, and none was spent on salaries or pensions.
Those are administrative changes. Those can be taken care of.
Let's go ahead and do that, if that's all right. Any objections or comments on this from any members of the council? Then thank you very much, Mr.
Well,
Holmes, we
I have
appreciate
one
it.
more, if I can make one more comment as to how you
Please,
might.
please make it brief, thank you.
How you might correct what I believe is the omission here. Looking back on page C of the, page 8, item C, it says the city council shall by resolution establish the composition of the committee and defining the terms of the committee's responsibilities. That, if you want to essentially add back the omitted language, that could be done at the time that the council defines the scope of the committee's responsibilities as provided in subsection C of the proposal.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll deal with that when we address this in the context of the
But
future.
I would encourage you not to reduce the scope of the Measure C committee, well, not Measure C, the future oversight committees.
Great, thanks very much for your comments, we appreciate it. With those administrative changes incorporated, I think we need a vote of approving the ordinance.
We do.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll go ahead and second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No, hearing none, the motion is approved. And the ordinance is adopted. So, we had skipped ahead. Do we have anything further from the city manager in terms of an oral report this evening?
I only had one thing I wanted to make sure the council and the community are aware of. I've had some citizen inquiries about all the orange barriers that are at the Magnolia and Bon Air intersection, and I want to clarify, they're not the city's actually, they belong to AT&T.
Yep.
AT&T started a project in the intersection, and unfortunately, they had to move their crew to another location, and we're trying to get a timetable from them on when they anticipate returning and completing the project. In this situation, they have certain rights as a utility, so our ability to is more of a request than a force. But we are trying to get them to move along and clean that up.
Are they cooperating with our requests?
Yeah, again, they have the challenge that they have only so many people, and I guess given the fact that they're a major provider of internet now on the West Coast, the crews need to be moved around to the highest priority locations, and unfortunately, right now, that intersection is not the one that's top of their list.
Okay.
So,
All right, anything else from
no, that was it. I just
your
wanted to
report
make
this
sure that
evening?
was.
Any questions? Mr. Chu.
Yeah, I was going to just ask you if you can encourage them to do that before school starts.
That's a good point. Well, when we talk to them again,
Yeah,
we'll
that's a good
Yeah,
point.
because
bring
that's
that up.
where it bottlenecks, because typically the two lanes become one at that point. So right now, it's only one lane that's usable.
Okay, great. Anything further for the city manager? Then let's move on to item number 6, council members' oral reports and comments. Do we have any reports from members of the council this evening?
I want to hear about Monday's meeting.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess we should report on that.
Please.
Well, the committee the mayor was there. The committee that is composed of 2 council members from Larkspur and Corte Madera met to review the first draft of the JPA agreement. And in that, probably the biggest discussion was, again, about the name. And effectively, what was done was that because of the legal entity of being a joint powers authority, it will retain the name of the Central Marin Fire Authority, but it will in effect do business as and be referred to as the Central Marin Fire Department.
Commonly called.
Commonly called. So,
Well,
Fire
that's-
department.
That's part of the issue, I think.
and I guess there are still some issues related to getting organized with CalPERS, and, the managers are working through that. But the next meeting will be an introduction of the JPA agreement to the respective councils for approval,
And when is the next meeting?
August.
August 16th.
August the 16th.
So
And
we'll,
where is that going to be held?
well, no,
Oh,
that's
that-
our
that's
regular
our
council
That's our
meeting.
regular council
For our
meeting.
council. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're not going to have another joint meeting.
No, this, well, at this point,
That's it, they're done.
Wow.
Yes, Mr. Helmer.
Was the insistence on the use of the word department and a conscious reference to future merger discussions between the Twin Cities?
Can I answer that one? I think it was more that fire has a tradition and a culture tradition of being departments. And it was an important semantic discussion that we did between the difference legally between what is an authority and what is a department. But the department name is still sort of a culturally retained name for fire departments all across the country. So it was not in anticipation of any future consolidation arrangements. It was just in keeping with tradition.
Was the possible perception of the use of that word discussed at all?
A lot, very much.
The discussion of a department of the Twin Cities being inferred?
Yes,
Wow.
Sort of.
sort of. But I think we have an opportunity.
I think the vice mayor's playfully going where we did not have a conversation. I think we should be clear about that.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I think that's right.
So if you would indulge me for a minute.
Please.
There was news coverage of Monday's meeting. It's very possible we're going to bring the JPA to the entire council at your August meeting. The reason being, CalPERS has signaled that they would like to see the legal incorporated entity of the JPA exist soon. The personnel won't move into the JPA right away under this scenario. We will form the JPA for purposes of advancing several administrative and bureaucratic processes that we need to complete. So that's why you may see it sooner than we've stated in the past.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. Any other comments from council?
No, I think if there was one clarification, just for anybody who's watching also, the authority as the Joint Powers Authority, that is the legal entity and the fiduciary body. When you're a department, you're part of a subgroup of the city as a municipal entity. So there were
I think Councilmember Hilmer understood that.
Yeah, okay. So that's mainly the difference, and
Yeah,
that's where the
right.
discussion
For
was.
August.
Yeah, that's fine. Just as anyone else from
I
the
have
council?
something to
Yes,
say.
okay, fine.
On
please.
Monday evening, I held a Hillview community meeting. We had 40 people attend. We also had Julian Skinner helped me out there with all the questions. It was a nice turnout. Measure C was discussed, road repair. No one opposed. In fact, they showed nothing but enthusiasm for it. We also talked about the detention basin out in the Magnolia and Dartmouth. We gave an update on the storm drains along with Bon Air Bridge. So it lasted for over an hour and a half. So I highly recommend my colleagues to have their neighbor committee meeting. It was quite a success, and people truly appreciated Julian for his expert advice and knowledge, and they also just appreciated having the time to ask the questions that they had. So thank you, Julian, for hanging out with me Monday night.
How much you charge for that service?
Did a great job, as always.
I have just.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to remind everybody that our Chief
Yes,
Norton
good.
sent around
Right.
the National Night Out, which is on August 1st, Tuesday, August
Tuesday.
1st.
That's right.
And they will be hosting a block party at both of the stations, Larkspur's 250 Doherty Station. And they encourage neighborhoods to put together their own block parties, and they'll come by, but you have to let the police department know that you're having a block party. And the second thing is, are we having a ribbon cutting tomorrow?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. That was it.
I can tell you where
Where
it is,
is
but I have it on my calendar
I
somewhere.
think is it in one of the new shops down here? I think 5 to 7. Okay.
This is what happens when Shannon goes on vacation. I forget things.
I do. Hold on. Ribbon cutting for Paulina Oldenbrook Interior Design at 485 Magnolia
Okay.
Avenue
Yeah.
from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I do plan to attend myself.
I'll be there with you.
There you go. Anything else from the council? If I could just, since I won't be there apparently for the next city council meeting on the 16th, and if we do have the fire department fire authority, or whatever it is that we're going to call it, consolidation. I did attend the meeting on Monday and listened with interest to the conversation about the naming issue. And for what it's worth, I would certainly encourage sticking with the authority designation and giving flexibility to the authority going forward to adopt whatever names that it feels that it needs to in order to engage with the community in a good way. I also, along those lines, note that representatives of our fire departments were present at the meeting on Monday. And although some of them, I think, had a personal interest in preserving the department designation, I think it was pretty universally expressed by those in attendance that evening that they're perfectly happy with the authority designation and are willing to go forward with whatever makes sense. And from my perspective, the use of the authority designation is the most appropriate way to go. So with that, I think we are concluded with agenda item number 6, and I apologize for dragging us out beyond 9 minutes this evening, but it's not my fault. I think we're on agenda item number 7, and we would like to adjourn this evening, and I'd like to accept a motion, but adjourn in the memory of Dick Wall. And do we have any comments about Dick this evening?
I think Vice Mayor Hilmer might most appropriately.
Dick Wall and his wife Mary, Dick was and Mary was and still is a long time volunteer for the city of Larkspur on many boards and commissions. Dick in particular served on multiple boards and commissions, sometimes simultaneously, very active in the Park and Recreation Department with respect to the master plan that has developed over the decades with respect to all of our parks. I just think it's appropriate we adjourn in his memory with gratitude for many decades of service and sacrifice by the Wall family.
And I think we all share that sentiment. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting in memory of Dick Wall. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.